Let me just start this off first and foremost. Franz, thanks so much for coming on. I know it's a little bit later over there. So Franz, where are you? Just to confirm, so everyone listening.
I am in Berlin, Germany at this point.
That's insane. And how is it? What's the weather like over there right now?
It's actually
sunny, beautiful.
Yeah, sunny, beautiful. Blue skies is but yesterday was a complete opposite. So I don't want to jinx it, but I hope it's going to be a great week. It's been a good Monday so far.
Well, knock on wood, friends. That's all that matters. If I don't feel that you need too much introduction. Sellics has pioneered the space, but maybe just a brief summary about your experience, because I think it's super interesting, especially like I know you had another company beforehand, but like entrepreneurship, Sellics, like the story. I want to hear it. I didn't get too much into your guys' journey beforehand. I've just seen more Sellics as a company build.
Yeah.
But Franz, you as a founder and you as an entrepreneur, when did that all start?
Yeah, sure. I mean, let me give you some context here. So I basically started companies right out of university. So I did my bachelor's studies, and then right out of university, I started first.
What did you study, Franz?
Business administration. So I studied in Paris and in Germany, and so I did my master's there. And then for the longest time, I was very much on a finance trip. So I was quite interested in investment banking and private equity. Mm-hmm. And then over the course of my studies, I developed more and more interest in entrepreneurship. I remember there were a couple of entrepreneurs coming to the university I was studying, and they just talked about what they're doing and their companies. And I thought that was amazing and very inspiring. And so I said, okay, well, why not give it a try? And so basically I was working on different things over the course of university. And then right after university, I started the first company called About Local. It wasn't a big success, but I think it was a good first endeavor. Basically what we did is we were scraping all online marketing activities of small local companies, and then we were building a database around this and selling access to that database to companies like Groupon and so on, which back then was a big hype, right?
Yeah.
You may remember these days. And and that was, as so often, that was also the starting point for Sellics, because the core capability that we developed in my first company was the ability to scrape data from public websites. And so I had a friend at the time who was selling on Amazon, and so he reached out to me. He was like, "Hey, you guys are very good at scraping data. Could you build me a ranking tracking solution for Amazon?" Because
and what year was this, Franz? Just so everyone is listening.
I mean, this was I'm not sure if it was 2013, for sure 2014, like 2013, 2014. So very, very early on, like super, super early on. And so my first reaction to this was like, oh man, like SEO for Amazon, like there must be solutions out there. SEO was a very well-established industry for Google back then. And so I remember typing in Amazon SEO into Google, and I found 3 articles talking about this topic, and I just felt like, oh man, why is nobody talking about this? Like, that's crazy. And so that was the starting point. So I did some more research, and then we saw that there's a big opportunity in the market. We saw that on one side, Amazon was about to replace Google as the #1 search engine for products, and it was clear that Amazon would dominate that space. And on the other side, we saw that no one was really doing anything in that space, talking about it. And so we started to create Sellics as back then one of the very first Amazon SEO solutions. For the people that were around back then, there was another company called AMZ Tracker. I don't know if you're familiar with it.
Way back when.
Way back. So those guys, I think they launched like 2 weeks ahead of us. I didn't know about them, and then I saw their website coming online. But so, I think that AMZ Trackers and Sellics were definitely one of the very, very early software companies in the, let's say, Amazon.
What did Amazon look like back then? So for context, I was a seller way back when. This was probably like 2014, right when Sellics was coming out. And I one of the funniest things, and people don't kind of grasp it now. So before like all the inventory trackers and like the Jungle Scouts, those things, people were like, so how did you do it beforehand? So there used to be this tactic, and you probably remember way back when, and you couldn't track how many like sales were happening on a day-to-day. So you'd have to like add the product to your cart. So I had a huge Excel sheet for like 25 days. So you add it to your cart, you click like 1,000 units as how many, and Amazon will say, sorry, there's only 72 left or 122. Right. And then you go back 24 hours and you do that again. And you have this spreadsheet of like 20, it took hours at a time, and you're just like tracking daily how much stock isn't left, and you try to get an average. It was an absolute nightmare.
Man. I love that you
But
bring up this, the 999 trick. Yeah, one of the very first, I don't know, let's call it hacks, right?
yeah,
One of so many hacks to follow in that market. I mean, it's incredible. So yeah, that was actually one of the, it wasn't the first feature. So our first feature was really to, you add a keyword, you add an ASIN, and we would show you how the ranks, the keyword ranks would evolve over time. That's how we started. But this one, we called it the SPY. And so the SPY was definitely something that we launched like rather early. I'd say maybe like 2015 or so. So you could add ASINs, and we would do this basically on a daily basis and then show it to you.
And was it based off that sort of algorithm too? Like way back when, it would just automatically run this cycle basically.
It would run the cycle. It would put in 999. It would try to buy 999 units. And then Amazon would return and say, hey, sorry, we only have 700 left. And so you do this the next day, and then the delta is basically, the unit. So,
oh, that's so good. So what did it look like then from a competitor landscape, more like from Amazon sellers? Obviously, I call like 2016, 2017 Amazon the Wild Wild West. What did you see back in like 2013, 2014? Because it's a whole different world.
I mean, it was compared to today, it was obviously completely different in the sense that Amazon private labeling was just getting started. Most sellers on Amazon back then were either resellers that would sell other brands, or they were large brands that would sell through the vendor system. But so there were few seller brands. That's one thing. There was basically no tooling, not from the ecosystem nor from Amazon. So Amazon also Seller Central. I mean, we can debate how terrible it is today, but back then was really, really, really limited. And so there were basically no tools out there as well. And then I think another big difference was that there were no ads on that back then. So Amazon back then was really in beta testing some of the ads. So it was a completely different landscape where basically organic ruled the world. And I mean, just to, some of the early tests we did, because obviously we were an Amazon expert ourselves. So we were trying to re-engineer the Amazon algorithm, in a very German engineering mindset.
Right.
We basically created the same product like 4 or 5 times. And then we only changed one thing. So let's say we put a certain keyword in the title, and then we create the same product with the keyword in the bullet points, and then in the product description, and the backend keywords, to then try to understand which field is weighted more or less, and so on. And so we're doing all sorts of experiments. And so we're really trying to learn and understand ourselves how Amazon is going. And then we would put this in our blog, which still today is a key part of our offering, right? Our blog where we share all the content. Yeah. And so we're basically trying to educate the market as well with this. So it was a very, compared to today, the level of knowledge, amongst everyone was very, very small compared to where it is today. I mean, today, you get a course, you watch a couple of videos, and you jumpstart your learning curve. It's
I don't think people grasp how crazy it was back then. Like, if you had an issue, there wasn't 9 blogs. Like, you couldn't just Google a lot of these things, right? And there wasn't communities how there were today. There was a couple ad hoc Facebook groups, but even then it was so limited. So back in 2013, 2014, 2015, how were you guys getting business? Because it was such a niche market to begin with. How were you guys trying to get those first 50 or 100 customers on the platform?
Yeah, so I think we were fortunate in that sense that I think the seller community realized and noticed that Amazon was a big thing, and so they were open and receptive to news around Amazon. And we came around the corner just with this big news of hey, you can now do SEO for Amazon. And so I think that this was a very, it was just good timing, I guess, because people were very open to this news. And it was very easy for us to get into publications and onto other blogs and so on, because it was, no one talked about Amazon and Amazon SEO. And so we were the first ones to talk about it. And so it was fairly easy to get into, let's say the e-commerce media. And so that's how it got started. Yeah. And so...
So how would you try to explain to someone now, whether it's a brand or so, what is Sellics and what did it transform to be? Just so everyone has context, if someone in the Wild West hasn't heard of you guys for whatever reason, what is Sellics?
So Sellics today, let's say Sellics up until 2 weeks ago, maybe, yeah.
Right.
Sellics up until 2 weeks ago is a Amazon software that helps brands to manage and optimize their Amazon advertising campaigns. But we have this approach of doing this holistically. So we think that in order to manage your ads successfully, you need more than just ad management. You need to combine it with your inventory, with your profit margins, with your reviews, and so. Think of it like a holistic ad management platform for Amazon. That's basically what Sellics is. So it's a software, so this is what Sellics has evolved into. So we started as a ranking trading solution. We kept adding functionalities, and at some point, advertising became more and more of our focus. And so most recently, this has been the heart of our offering.
Amazing. Okay, so then paint the picture. So we had 2013, we had 2014. We're building up the model. Now we get into, let's say, 2015, 2016. What did that core team look like? Now you guys are probably 2-3 years in, a little bit more of a scale-up perspective. Where was the company at that place in terms of stability, in terms of growth? How many customers were you guys dealing with, and so forth?
So it was the first couple of years were really, really tough and slow. So first of all, Sellics was a bootstrap company up until 2019. And so by bootstrap, I literally mean like 1,950 euros. It's about 2K USD. So it's very, very bootstrapped. And so I think the team grew pretty slowly. So I think that by 2015 we're probably 6 to 8 people. 2016 about like 10, 12 people.
Interesting.
And so that's basically where we were in terms of employee base. And so. Yeah, and I think that really the accelerating years for us were 2016 and 2017. That's probably
why do you say that? What really, in your opinion, what turned the model? Was there something that clicked? Was it just velocity of scale? Was it just all the new flood of new sellers in the Amazon world? What was it? And I'm super interested if there was 1 or 2 levers, or it was just kind of a couple of years of grind that just kind of lifted everything up.
I mean, as so often it's a 3-4 year overnight success, right?
Yeah, right.
So I think it's been, but I think there are some factors that were really decisive. So I think that on the one side, obviously the overall industry growth and the sheer amount of sellers going into the space has been a factor. And then I think that the product matured, and we added some functionalities that I think were blockbusters. We had we added a profit dashboard that I think in the early 2016 or so that was extremely popular. We had a mobile app for it and so on. I think, and so we had a couple of others as well, like just product features that I think were just spot on back then. And so I think the combination of a lot of fast growing market and then a very good product market fit after some iterations, I think just at some point you grow, you're not even really sure why you're growing so quickly, but you just you grow and grow and grow, and so it's a magic that happens when the different pieces come together.
So then 2019 hits, and then you guys raised your first round of capital. How much capital was it that you guys raised?
So we raised $10 million, and so we were basically, so at the end of 2018 we were in a situation where we felt like we had to make a choice to either sell the company or go big. Because we saw that the industry was maturing, there were other players that started to raise capital, and so we felt that just continuing as a bootstrap company is not a good strategy. And so look, I'm very back then I was very optimistic about the industry. I still am today, and so we said, okay, why selling if the best is still ahead of us? And so let's continue and so we raised our first round in July 2019.
And where did that capital go towards in terms of back then? Where was the priority? Was it on marketing? Was it on software? Where did you guys feel that you had to put the resources to get you guys to that next level, and you guys needed the capital to do so?
Yeah, so we had 2 key pillars. The first one was that over the years, and so specifically, starting 2018, we were going more up market. So we were targeting more established sellers. We were targeting vendors and agencies as well. And so Sellics per se, we're headquartered in Germany, but we always had a strong presence in the US. And so one of the things that we raised capital for is to actually build up an on the ground team. So we opened an office in New York, and so we hired a team in the US. So that's been one chunk, and then the other chunk has been to invest in the product. I mean, you know the space very well. Amazon is developing so quickly, and they doubled down so aggressively on advertising that in order to keep up with all the releases and to keep up with all the possibilities, you just need to have a certain amount of resources. And so that was the second part of the investment.
And of course, like what I'm super curious of is especially as you can imagine, like shit happens. I want to hear about some of the downfalls here. Obviously, you guys have built out so many tools within the platform. Has there been any that really just didn't click? Obviously, you guys probably tried so many. Is there any that like you put it into the market, there just wasn't feedback, or maybe there was something like some sort of feature that was half-assed and that ended up not ever launching? Anything like that? I'm super curious.
Oh man,
there's a list.
I think there's a long list there. I think overall, I mean, when you I think what you notice is that in an industry like Amazon, where you're built on top of a big platform that's moving so quickly, opportunities come, but they also go. And so, for instance, the 999 trick that we talked about earlier, at some point, sellers obviously start to realize that this is a trick. And so in order to avoid this, they basically either put the inventory to always above 999 because then you couldn't track it anymore, or they put it to below 20. Sorry, just got a phone call here, got cut off. And so this trick at some point then didn't work anymore, right? Or for the majority of products didn't work, and so you got to deprecate this feature. At some point, we scraped Vendor Central to get access to conversion rate data and impression data because that's a very valuable data point. But it's also then got more difficult. So I think now, ironically, now it's coming through the API, so we're very excited about this to add it to our product again. But so I think there are these kind of situations where the needs of the market evolve. Or one thing we did at some point is we were matching. There was a time when everyone was reaching out to reviewers when they left a negative review, and so the big challenge was to match the reviewer with the order in order to get the contact information, right? So we did that, and then and then at some point Amazon took away some identifiers, so you couldn't do it. So there's just, I think the key in this industry is to always be cutting edge and to be able to just build new things and take advantage of the opportunities as they emerge, because the landscape is changing so quickly. So I think that's the key ability.
Because you mentioned something there, and especially when it comes to like Amazon it's changing so bloody fast. Mm-hmm. It's like your ability to be nimble on the ball is so difficult. What's been one or two of the most interesting things that have changed with Amazon's algorithm? And obviously it's got scrappy over time, but was there any cool insights, whether it was from like the keyword side, whether it was from the data that they're allowing or pulling back, anything that you said, that's crazy how they changed that, or something that you really learned about that impacted your guys' business?
Yeah, I mean, I think, so on the algorithm side, at the beginning, it was fascinating how simple it was, right? So think about like 2014 or so, Google SEO had been around for a decade. And so you felt that the Google algorithm was already very sophisticated. And it was very difficult to trick the algorithm in Google. On Amazon, literally, the first year or so that we were around, you just added a couple of keywords to the title, to the bullet points, and instantly the next day you would rank higher. Instantly. Yeah. And so that was just, I think over time, Amazon probably realized how simple the algorithm was. And so they refined it to make it less prone to readable. Yeah, that's readable. Yeah, let's put it that way. Yeah. So I think that this has been a huge change over time. And so I think gradually the way I look at it is initially it was all about organic and kind of finding those hacks in the algorithm. And then over time, it's basically been replaced by advertising. And so I think today, really, if you want to be successful, advertising is the key to success. And then organic is kind of like, it's a hygiene factor. You need good pictures and titles and all these things, but it's not going to make the difference by itself. You just need to run ads on top of it. So I think that's been the biggest change. And so I think, from a strategic point of view, what this means is that you had this very interesting period between, I'd say, 2014 to maybe like 2018, 19, where I feel you had this unusual situation where a small guy in his garage or his or her garage could basically win against Procter & Gamble and some of the biggest brands in the world, because the small guy in the garage was just a lot faster to learn about the algorithm and to implement things and to have an advantage, because money didn't matter, knowledge was more important, right? And so I think now with the shift towards advertising, it basically puts the advantage back towards the people that have the money to invest into ads, right? Which tend to be the larger companies, not always. But
and are you obviously way back when, like, there were so many cracks in the algo, like, and there was a lot of black hat ways to get things done. We can just call a spade, right? Between like the way that you could rank, the way that you could launch new products, the way that you could obviously generate reviews was a little bit shakier back then.
Yes.
Is there still cracks now that you guys are noticing? Like these hacks that are working, like way back when there was 1,000 hacks, like the 999. Is there still hacks, or is Amazon's algorithm just so concrete? There's no get quick strategy. It's all about, there's real allocation. Big brands are going to keep spending, and it's hard to break that wall now.
I think it's there's no obvious crack in the algorithm. I think, what's the biggest advantage of Amazon versus a Google is that Amazon has a very easy time to track success of a search. Right? You search for something, you buy some product, okay, it's successful. You don't buy the product, not successful. On Google, it's a lot more difficult, right? You click around, you run the websites, you bounce back, you search. But so because on Amazon there's only 1 in 10, which is to buy products, it's a lot easier for Amazon to track success. And because it's a lot easier to track success, it's also easier to optimize the algorithm towards that one metric. And so I think that what Amazon did over the years is that they optimized the algorithm more and more towards, is it actually selling a product? And yes, if the better a product is selling, the higher it should rank. And so the effort to fake a purchase is obviously a lot higher than just adding a couple of keywords. So look, I've heard about networks of 20,000 people that would just buy products and then to make it rank, and then there's buy and then pay back on PayPal and all these kind of things. But it's basically all these things. All they're doing is they're faking a purchase. And so that's basically the only way how you could, I think, still hack the system, I guess. But I don't advise to do so.
And it was crazy. So just for context, what Franz talking about, there was a lot of black hat ways, even like a few years ago. And they really shut it down. Probably like a year before COVID was when they really dialed in on it. Probably 2019 was when like there was the huge sellers getting knocked down. They were doing these wave hits of like 20, 30, 50,000 sellers at a time, where they would just scrape through, flag them all because they were doing ridiculously sketchy stuff when it comes to the way they generate reviews through like Facebook groups, through rebates. Like there was a lot of these strategic ways way back when. They'd had these huge Facebook review groups, but then like it's Amazon. They would either jump into the group and start catching it. They would start connecting. Like if you had a cousin through a cousin on Facebook, it was nuts the way that they were flagging it, but they understand like the consistency of reviews. Like at the end of the day, if someone clicks on your product and then reviews it 24 hours later, and they're from like the same geographic as you, like the chances are astronomical of that happening. So Amazon, people think they're so sneaky, and I'm like, guys, this is the strongest technology questionably on planet Earth. You guys of course have to think that they're going to be able to catch if your mom's friend reviewed the product. Like it's a suicide mission, right?
Yeah, look, I remember that people started to become paranoid, and so they would delete their Amazon apps on their phones because they thought that Amazon would read out the phone numbers and then see who you're connected to and all this. And so, it was a different job. So I think if we call this the Wild West, then I think the Wild West is over, right? So I think that you don't have this much anymore. I think that, look, back then, like masterminds were a big thing where you would just, basically the key value is you go there to share black hat tactics, right? And I think masterminds are still very valuable today, but back then it was literally this group of insiders, and you would share, like, oh, have you heard of this? And this is working.
So then when it comes to, if you had to paint a picture, obviously an Amazon seller way back when, right now, what does a successful Amazon seller brand look like? The ones that you're seeing are the ones that are on platform, like the ones that are outperforming. Are they capital backed? Are they still mom and pops? Are they just traditional brands that have other channels? What are you seeing if you had to define what kind of a successful business now looks like?
Yeah, I mean, I'd say there are probably two models. Yeah. I think one model is you just have a very, very strong product. I think that's what sometimes is forgotten. It's like if you actually have a very good product with the right specs and the right pricing and so on, like ultimately, it will rise to the top because it's a really good product. So either you have a really strong product, or you have an established brand and the resources behind it. And so obviously, ideally, you have both, and then obviously you will excel. But I think that those are kind of the two models that I see today. So I don't think that it's only large players that are successful. I think that you still have a bunch of mom and pop stores that have, and maybe they got lucky, maybe they just did a very good research, but then they would have like, I don't know, 10 ASINs, two of which are just crushing it, right? And so, but I think that those are the two models, and I think, yeah. So I think, yeah, no, I mean, I guess those are really the two things. But overall, it's getting a lot more professional. So the days of you just upload your product, you do a few things, and then it's there. It's become more of a like ongoing thing. You constantly need to be added.
Like an actual business now, basically, right?
Well,
Instead of the seller, you need an actual infrastructure.
Exactly. I mean, you need an actual infrastructure. I think that my view on this is that down the line, what you need is you actually need to build a brand, right? And so that's how you'll be successful. And so a brand consists of more channels than just Amazon, right? Shopify, I think you had an episode with Shopify recently, right? So building your brands on Shopify, working more with influencers, running ads outside of Amazon, and routing them to Amazon. So I think that these type of activities, they always had an advantage, but I think that now they will become more and more relevant because other tricks to drive your sales are disappearing, and so now you need new things to get an edge. So I think.
So what are you seeing then? Whether it's the aggregators, whether it's the really big brands, because so we work with a lot of them too, so we get to see a lot of the, I don't know what insider trading it almost feels like, but what are you seeing the biggest and the baddest brands doing? Are they aggressively pushing advertising? Are they expanding catalog? Are they going international? What are you seeing be some of the trends that now you're seeing more than ever for these bigger companies that actually start scaling things up?
Yeah, I think so. The biggest thing I noticed, but I may have a slightly biased view here because we're obviously big on advertising. But so what I really see is just the investment in advertising and really going beyond the typical sponsored products campaign, right? And basically going full funnel. So sponsored brand, sponsored display certainly as well. But then I think the more advanced ones are using DSP a lot these days, right?
Yep.
And so everything that's around there, OTT and so on. And so I think that that's something I noticed. And the other thing I noticed is that there's a lot of, let's say, interest to go, I call it off Amazon ads. So you would go to TikTok, you would go to Google, to Facebook, any Pinterest maybe. So any platform that would allow you to run ads, and then you would use attribution to then send the traffic back to Amazon and to track the impact of it. So I think that those are the things that I'm seeing. Yeah. And so I think specifically the aggregators, which I think on average are very sophisticated, I think that we see a lot of interest and appetite around this.
Right. And are you seeing international expansions? Obviously, and maybe you have another bias because Germany, of course, is kind of the footprint. But we see it mostly, and most of our listeners are these North American sellers. International waters. I even have a hard time convincing sellers in the US to expand to Canada. What are you seeing with the international scale? UK, Germany, is it getting more demand?
So I think that's been one of the biggest mysteries for me in the past couple of years. Is like, we have half of our customer base in the US, half of our customer base in Europe. And so we thought like, hey, why don't we just have Europeans to go to the US and US folks to come over to Europe? And the interest on both sides has just been fairly low. And so I remember talking to one seller at some point who was at Prosper Show. He was like, well, look, I'd rather launch a new product than taking an existing product to Europe. And so I think that that's somewhat, I think the theme that I've seen. I think within Europe, what you see is that sellers that start on one marketplace, once a product is successful, they expand very quickly to all marketplaces. So you have very few sellers that are just on 2 or 3 marketplaces. They typically are, big 5, or now also Sweden and Netherlands and so on. So they go to 6, 7, 8, right? But so it's in Europe, I'd say it's either all or one, and few in between. In North America, I mean, I have the same impression is that, folks really like Amazon.com, and then Canada and Mexico is more of an afterthought, and doesn't get so much attention. So I don't think that this has been the main driver of growth. Actually, I think probably with all the logistical hiccups that you see in the world, it probably also adds to the challenge of going international. Yeah? But that has not been the key or the number one strategy from my point of view.
And I think it's one of the downfalls that comes with these North American sellers. Like a lot of the big Amazon.com, I don't want to call it arrogance, but I think it's almost that, where they feel that their Amazon.com provides more than enough, that why would they try to catch another 15% in Canada or the UK or Germany? Like they don't feel that it's necessary. But it's this whole idea of diversifying. It's the same way with the off-channel strategy, right? Like it all talks the same language, where you're putting all your eggs in one basket. And while I agree to some sense that if you go long and narrow with a few products and just keep launching on .com, it can provide enough. But if that Amazon.com, anything happens to it, like, whew, it's gonna be a long day at home for you in the business, because you're completely dedicated towards this one channel, versus if you have .ca in Germany and UK, there's this diversity portfolio. And also from like a valuation perspective, you're a global brand, right? And you can touch global customers, which is a whole different perspective than just being an Amazon.com seller, right?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I mean, I see this perspective, like the diversification perspective. I also see the other argument of saying, well, kind of 80-20, how much effort is it now? Okay, so suddenly you're on different countries, taxation, languages, stock management, all these things become more complex. So I think, the way that I always thought is the best way to go international is to actually offer like a full service, right? You just say, okay, let me take your .com product, and I'm going to take care of managing all the other countries for you, because I think that then you take away a lot of the complexity. So,
interesting.
Yeah, I also, I mean, kind of the same argument goes for Walmart. I don't know what you see here. So I see, my point of view, what I see is that people are interested in Walmart. There is this desire to go off Amazon, but then actually in terms of sales volume, it's there's quite a substantial difference typically between Amazon and Walmart. And so it kind of almost comes back to Amazon again and again and again. And so, yeah.
We see the exact same thing. Like everyone, it's just kind of it's whatever's shiny at the time, right? Like right now, like Walmart.com is getting a lot of love, and they're rolling out new things. It's kind of the talk of the town. People are just kind of nervous about their own Amazon. But I think it's just like over promise, under deliver, where they're expecting the world coming from a platform that's in its infancy compared to where Amazon was, right? And it will become this massive player, but they imagine these kind of overnight successes that take 3 to 4 years, and they imagine they put their product on Walmart and it's going to perform the exact same as it does on Amazon. It's just not the case. It's just the expectations, like that gap is huge, right?
Yeah, I mean, look, there are not this many Amazons, right? I mean, there's just one Amazon, and then the delta between Amazon and the second is just huge. And so I think that it's sometimes you forget it because I'm sure you know many of those examples as well. If you hit the jackpot on Amazon, I mean, you launch the right product, you do it in the right way, sales go up very quickly. I mean, you go from zero to big revenue very quickly, and so it's. I'm not probably in China with Alibaba and so on. There are other platforms globally, but I think in, let's say, the Western world, Western Europe and the US or North America, I think that there's a big difference between Amazon and the West. But look, I think it's changing, and I think it's also important to be there and to invest in this. But it's about having the right expectations, I would agree.
So let's dive into what I thought would be the most interesting part, and this is where a lot of the noise is right now, Franz. Is obviously the acquisition. this is huge. Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
I woke up and I was thriving for you, because I've seen this almost like pioneer to like where you guys have become, which is super cool to kind of see the entire journey through. This is huge. What does this mean? And maybe just explain to people what this partnership looks like, because they probably read the headlines, but they might not dive into the technicals. What does this mean, and why did you guys take this route?
Yeah, so I think so. We're joining forces with Perpetua, right? Which is super exciting, and so I think the context of this is that the industry to a certain degree is large, but it's also not that large, right? So I think most software providers in that space, we know one another, we talk, and so I think people that have been following the industry over the past 3 years or so, there has been a lot of consolidation in the software space. And so I think that there are good reasons for this consolidation. And so now with Perpetua, so I've been in touch with Accenture, which is kind of the holding entity behind Perpetua, right? With Accenture and also Perpetua for years now. And so I think that now the timing is right, and so we decided to join forces. And so we announced. We announced the transaction, I think, 2 weeks ago today. And so I'm really excited. I think Perpetua is actually the perfect partner for Sellics. I think the team at Perpetua is phenomenal. I think the way they innovate and the pace at which they just iterate and bring new things to market. I mean, they have DSP, very, very cutting edge editorials, influences. I mean, I think they're just very, very much cutting edge. And so, they've been obviously very focused on advertising for the past couple of years, but I've always admired the innovation that they brought. And so I felt that, both teams have a strong desire to innovate and launch new things. And so we thought it was a good fit to join forces, because I think ultimately what's happening in the industry is that size just becomes more and more relevant. And I think it's going to be more and more difficult for smaller players to keep up with all the things that Amazon releases. And not just Amazon, right? I mean, now we talk about Walmart, we talk about Instacart, Walgreens. I mean, all these platforms. And so in order to really provide the best value to customers, I think that size is just becoming a critical factor. And so that's been, kind of the key rationale for us, where we said, okay, well, it's probably better to join forces and to be bigger together, and then Perpetua is just the perfect partner for us.
So how did you feel like that whole experience? I think it's just super interesting, especially again, like the founder's mindset. And it's still probably pretty new to you. Like what were those emotions? When is it forgiving? Is it excited? Like, how did you feel right when it closed versus how do you feel right now?
Well, look, I mean, it's I think, look, it's my first kind of exit transaction in that sense, and so it's I think obviously it's not a topic that you think about every day, but I've been doing Sellics for 7-8 years, so from time to time you think about it, and so I think the reality, you think it's gonna be this one big moment, right? You sign the contract, and then the world changes, and the reality, exactly, right? It's nothing like this, really. So it was just it's remarkably kind of business as usual, I'd say, as you go through this, because I think this doesn't just happen within a week. It's not like you pick up the phone and then the next week you like, this takes months, right? And so
how long has it been, just for context, so people kind of understand like how long an acquisition like this might take?
I think the general rule of thumb is anywhere around like 6 months, probably, right? Give or take, yeah. And so I think it's been similar for us, maybe a bit less, but we talk about months, right, and not just a couple of weeks. And so I think what happens is that because you work on this for months, right, and there is this process, it is not like it's not like a sudden moment. It is basically you get used to the idea, and you start to rationalize the idea over a longer period, and then basically the moment that a deal closes. It's not like it's the next day you gotta announce it to the team. It's a big news for the team, and so you gotta make sure that the team is doing fine, and you gotta start working on the integration, the partnership, and everything. So it's surprisingly non-stop work. You would expect that it's like this big party and interruption and everything in between. In fact, we actually had the party like kind of a smaller party, only last week Thursday. So almost
some of the
two weeks
Perpetua
afterwards.
guys came to Berlin too, right? From understanding.
Yeah. So I think. I mean, it's actually been 2 weeks now that we signed probably exactly now two weeks ago, and so I think it's been a terrific experience since then. I give a lot of kudos to the Sellics team, but also to the Perpetua team. I think that everyone, there's excitement all over the place. There's a high level of energy, and we're just moving so fast. It's just remarkable. It's mind blowing. And so in fact, Perpetua had a couple of folks over in Berlin last week, and so we did a ton of workshops together and everything. And so I think it's just been, there wasn't this time to really process and digest it, I guess, right? So the emotion primarily, I'd say, is excitement and energy. That's like how I would describe the situation.
So what's your role going to look like now? How deep into it, and where would that role entail? Is it on tech? Is it on marketing? Is it a little bit of just everything? Where will that go?
So I can't share too many details. First of all, what I can share is that the entire Sellics founder team is going to stay on board, and so we're committed long term. So so that's, I think, the first one. And then
you're not leaving anytime soon.
No, I'll be around. So for those people that I'm very much looking forward to meet everyone at conferences and everywhere. I'm going to be around. In fact, actually, I'll be at the next conference in the US. I'll be in Austin on Perpetua's own conference there.
Amazing.
I don't know if you're coming as well. But so I'll be there. Yeah. So that would be great. And so my role, I can't share too many details, but what I can share is kind of working on a set of new product offerings. I think that's going to be my role in bringing new product offerings to market as part of the broader Perpetua product offering. So I think that we have big plans. And so I think advertising has been remains a very strong focus, but there's appetite to cover more than just advertising. And so I think that's where I spend a lot of my time working on the product and then also bringing this to market. And so kind of like
that's amazing.
That's a kind of a product within the product, if you want, like a module. Sure. Right? So that's basically going to be.
And we'll see soon. So there's no. Everyone will get a chance to see kind of the new and involved very shortly. So I'm super excited. Outlook for the next. I got 2 or 3 more questions, and then we'll close it up. Franz,
sure.
I know you're a busy man. What's your outlook for the next 2 to 3 years when it comes to the Amazon e-commerce space? Any major predictions that you kind of want to put down of what you're seeing or what's going to happen with the market?
Well, so I think on the one side, I think you have a continuation of this entire advertising trend. I think that's definitely something that we see with everyone just copying whatever Amazon is doing, and Amazon just innovating and releasing a ton of things. So I think that's going to be a big one. I'm personally very, very optimistic about all of the off-Amazon topics. I think that's going to be huge. I think that what we'll see is, that's a prediction that those folks that made it big on Amazon over the past couple of years, I think that there's going to be a tendency to go DTC. I think that's definitely something that I expect will happen. And so probably the third, I don't know if it's a trend. I think it's more of a continuation. Really, it's like it will continue to become more and more professional. I think that's really it. So really, if you ask me this way, like I think the most disruptive probably trend that I expect is this move to DTC, and everyone trying to be to become a checkout platform, and TikTok where you can buy, and Instagram shops and these kind of things, and of course every platform wants to be the platform where you buy.
Right.
And so I think that's going to be kind of the theme for the next couple of years. And we'll see. I mean, the move from Amazon, the Prime checkout, I think is going to be is a very smart move. So we'll see. Yeah, that's how things go.
I'm so bullish on TikTok. You've no idea. I was on like a webinar a couple of days ago. And we did that whole thing with Shopify.
Yeah.
And it was supposed to be this whole formal like e-commerce strategy, and it just dove into this like deep dive of TikTok. And I'm seeing these like brands go over the past year. And I think the biggest thing that we're seeing is also there's an expiry date for a lot of this, right? Like whether it is that e-commerce or social media channel, people think that, oh, I'll jump into TikTok and a year and a half because I got to finalize a few things, but like they have an expiry date. The same way like Google Ads was amazing and it used to be way cheap, probably when you were starting Sellics and it was profitable. And now you type in any keyword near that, or Facebook marketing back in 2017, 2018, like things have an expiry date. And then people look back at it. And if you spoke to me before to talk about like Facebook marketing, like I'll be like, I missed it. I missed it. And I don't want people to do that same thing with like D2C, with their TikTok strategy. Like these are all here, but I promise you, if you wait a few years, like you're going to be looking back and going, okay, shit, I dropped the ball on this for sure.
100%. I've seen this over and over again. It's basically every platform. The people that are in the platform, they will just benefit like crazy from it, right? It's the same pattern every time. And so what's remarkable is just you always think, okay, well, that's the last platform now. And then 2 years later, there's a new platform coming out. So 100%. I've seen this so many times over the past couple of years. Couldn't agree more.
I got my final 4 questions for you, friends, and then I'm closing it up here. Favorite business book? Do you read business books?
Yeah, sure.
You listen to it. How do you consume it?
No, I read them primarily on Kindle. Okay. I think I didn't read so much over the past couple of months, but before I think one of my favorite books is From Good to Great. I think that's a really good one. I think that's probably my one of my favorite ones.
That's the recommendation.
Yes.
Are you following any CEOs?
Not so much at this point. I used to follow the big ones like Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos. I think is a very very impressive guy. But other than this, no, not so much now.
How many hours of sleep do you get a
night? Well, given I have a little kid, it's probably anywhere between 6 and 7.
And how old's your child? How young?
2 years now.
Oh my gosh! So all this is happening while you have a newborn that's coming into the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what would you tell your 20-year-old self?
My 20-year-old self is I'd probably tell myself to be to have the patience. I think that at times I was just not very very patient, and you wanted too much in too short time. And I think sometimes, I think most of the time good things take time. But obviously in today's world, you're always under the impression that everything happens overnight and everything is great and so on. So I think most of the time that's the case. So having the coolness to just say, okay, look, it's okay. It doesn't always just go up and to the right. I think that's probably something I tell myself.
Okay, amazing, man. No, this was amazing, Fred. I appreciate your time. Obviously, there's some really huge things coming, and you're going to be everywhere. So we're excited to see you, and we're going to be seeing you more at the conferences and everything over here in North America too. So maybe something in Canada in the future. It's a little bit cold, so
I'll be in Toronto in 2 weeks actually. So if you're around, we could meet you.
Yeah, I'm here. We're right near the Perpetua office, so we're super close.
Okay, well, great.
Super close. Where can people find you, Franz? Where's the best place?
Online, certainly LinkedIn. That's the way to go. So if you want to contact me, feel free to just ping me on LinkedIn. And then other than this, certainly the typical conferences that you want to meet in person, both in the US and also in Europe. So very very approachable. So just feel free to ping me.
Cool, man. Franz, it was super nice. This was fantastic. I'll talk to you soon, and I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you. Yeah, see you around. Bye-bye.